it's great to be here. Sometimes that's, for some people that's kind of a nicer comment than for me. I'm glad to be anywhere where I'm not surrounded by militant homosexuals who want me dead. Actually, it's really nice to be here. A lot of you were really nice about saying, boy, I'm so grateful that you came to Sulphur Springs, you came out here or whatever. It's a lot nicer being here than most places. Most places, even in so-called Christian circles, seems like you're always under attack for believing what Christians have believed for thousands of years. And I think it's a little more accepted out here than it is in some other places. So I thank y'all for having me. What I really wanted to do today was kind of give you an update from the front line, I guess, kind of tell you what's going on a little bit. And then after we're done, you can we'll have a time for, if you want to ask a question or whatever, or snide remark or whatever you want to do, we'll be happy to talk and discuss or whatever. But I just wanted to start out, the group I had, I know Kent mentioned Liberty Legal Institute, sort of the umbrella group, I would say. Basically, we have a mission that's sort of an unrealistic mission this side of heaven. But basically, our goal is to make every law and public policy as consistent with biblical principles as possible. So that means we go into the courts, the legislature, and the media, and we battle for those principles. And, even those who fight against us don't understand that if we succeed, they'll be more blessed than if they succeed. But we feel like as Christians, if we love our neighbors, that's what we'll do. And so I'm going to go into kind of each of those areas, court, legislature, media, and kind of, let's talk about what's happening real quickly. Before I did that, I thought, some of you know me, some of you don't. Let me explain to you really quickly, I guess, how did you get involved in this kind of stuff? Back when I was in high school, I realized that I had gifts in analytical thinking and speaking, and I thought, well, I either need to be a pastor or a lawyer. And, that's kind of a funny choice. Some people feel like I'm choosing between, Satan and Christ. And I went to my youth minister, who was a good guy, and I said, what do you think about this? And he said, I'll tell you what, if you're called to be a pastor, boy, what a wonderful calling. He said, but you know what? We've got a lot of Christian pastors. We sure could use some Christian lawyers. And so as I looked at it and analyzed it and prayed about it, I really felt called to go to law school. But even when I was in law school, my heart was really for ministry. And so I spent a lot of my time, to be honest, in law school, leading the discipleship group of the college students at my church. And people entered my law school with a lot higher intelligence scores. I mean, I was like mid-level. They worked a lot harder than me because, I spent a lot of my extra time elsewhere. But I was getting all the highest grades. And it was just the Lord's way of showing me that He wanted me to use this. And so I got out, I clerked for a federal judge, and you do that for a year, and then all the big law firms want you because you know how it works behind the scenes, you know what influences the judge and what wins and what doesn't. And so I had all these offers. And I sat in my office and I thought, Lord, I just don't have any desire to go work at these big law firms. And I remember just thinking to myself, well, what do you want to do? And I thought, well, I think I'm supposed to use my legal skills because the Lord showed me that in law school, but I also want to be involved in ministry. I want to be involved helping pastors and churches and be involved in religious freedom. And I'd even like to go to seminary part-time if I could. And I laughed because there was no job like that in the United States. And so about a month later, I got a call from two guys I'd never met. They were both attorneys in big law firms in Dallas. They both started to give their time to do religious freedom work, and they were now getting so many calls that it was starting to hurt their ability to practice law and make a living. And so they said, look, we're not going to do this, but we heard about you. And so what we're wondering is, would you be willing to work on legal cases, use your legal skills, help pastors and churches, and be involved in religious freedom, and you can even go to seminary part-time if you want to. And that was a little over 20 years ago. So that's how I got involved in doing this kind of work, is God created the job that, really, that was the desire of my heart. And I've been getting to do that now for a long time. So I just wanted you to understand kind of why I do what I do. And what's fun is all the people that work with me are the same way. I've got some of the top lawyers in the country. I've got people who could leave and literally increase their salary by 500%. But that's not why they're working with us. They really feel called by the Lord to be where we are and to get to do what we do. And, it's one of the few places where you can be kind of, what's the word? You can be a little pugnacious, and if it's for the right cause, it's okay. It's okay to sue people. Usually if you go into church and talk about suing somebody, it's not real good, but everybody claps when we do it, so it's kind of fun. We're suing the bad guys. Actually, we're enforcing the law. We're enforcing our Constitution and the Judeo-Christian principles that were put in place at the beginning of our country. But let me start. I just want to go through these different areas. Let me start with the legislature and give you a little update. Now, some of this you don't need because you're seeing a lot of this stuff about the national. It's not like somebody made a joke to me when they came in and said, I guess you don't have anything to do these days. Everybody's aware that with the election of the president we now have and the Congress that we now have, that my job load increased fairly dramatically. And I'll just hit a couple of highlights or lowlights, depending upon how you want to describe these, to let you know the kind of thing we're in for. Some of it you may have heard of, probably a lot of it you haven't. I'm not going to talk about all the stuff going on now. We can talk about, but I'm not going to go through it all with the government takeover of health care and cap and trade and all the other stuff that you probably heard a lot about. Let me talk about the stuff that pro-family, religious freedom type stuff that would be really important, especially to churches and pastors. Let's start with hate crimes. We're about to have a hate crimes law in the United States of America, which is a real tragedy. We already have a hate crimes law, but this one is a special one. It's going to add sexual orientation to a special class of protection above all other classes. So, if your 8-year-old girl is attacked, she now gets less protection than if a 22-year-old, perfectly healthy homosexual male gets attacked. And that was exposed very deftly by some congressmen in the House when they offered amendments. They said, look, you can't protect, some Americans more than you do other Americans. We protect everybody. If there's an assault, prosecute them. But we don't put people in separate classes. And so they offered amendments. They said, okay, if we're going to elevate certain people into certain classes, then let's protect pregnant women in a special class. If they're attacked, then there's extra penalties. They voted it down. What about attacks upon our servicemen on U.S. soil? They voted that down. They said, okay, well, if you're not going to include them, then let's at least make clear that sexual orientation doesn't include pedophiles, because otherwise what you're saying is pedophiles get extra protection in the law than other citizens in the United States. They voted that down. And it made it out of the House and over to the Senate. They didn't have the votes. It was now being referred to as the Pedophile Protection Act when it made it to the Senate. But what the Senate decided to do, since they couldn't really win on the issue, is they attached it to the defense budget, so that in order to vote against it, you have to vote against the funding for your troops. And so it looks like it's now about to pass, and we'll have to wait and see. Well, why is it important? Well, everywhere they've passed hate crimes laws, within usually about 6 months, one of the first victims is a pastor. Aki Green in Sweden was actually convicted of 30 days in jail for reading in his pulpit out of Romans 1 on homosexuality. Philadelphia 7, some of you might have heard about that. Philadelphia had a law like this, so it's not just other countries. It happened in Canada, it happened in Sweden, it happened all this, but it's happening in the United States. In Philadelphia, there was a homosexual outfest, and a bunch of people showed up to just share the gospel at this. They thought these people need to know the Lord. They were charged for sharing the gospel. That was considered a, quote, hate crime. And they were charged with up to 99 years in prison in a criminal case. Now, they ended up getting attorneys, and I know some of these attorneys, and they ended up winning their case. But that's a lot of, talk about a chilling effect. Who wants to go have to hire a bunch of attorneys to defend the right to share the gospel? What about the bill sponsor? Well, the bill sponsor of this hate crimes bill was specifically asked by Louis Gohmert. Some of y'all know who Louis is, a congressman in East Texas. And Louis specifically asked, would this bill apply to pastors, this hate crimes bill? And you'd think the sponsor would say, of course not, we're not going to apply it to pastors. The answer of the sponsor was absolutely. So we're about to have this law. My guess is we're about to have a repeat if we, unless by some miracle we stop this from becoming law. This is something that President Obama promised when he was a candidate. So he's certainly not going to veto it. It's one of the first things that went up on his website. So hate crimes, get ready.